Naya stood in front of the family mansion, holding the business ownership papers in her shaking hands. "I was never your daughter, right?" she whispered to her stepfather. "Good. Then you won't miss what I just took." Naya was just 8 years old when everything changed. Her mother, after years of raising Naya alone, married a man named Kofi. At first, Naya tried to be happy. She thought maybe now they would be a real family. But when Kofi moved in, he didn't come alone. He brought his 2 sons with him. From that moment on, things slowly shifted. Naya, who once had her mother's full attention, started feeling like an outsider in her own home. It started small. Her mother would cook dinner and serve Kofi and his sons first. Naya's plate always came last. When they went out, she was told to stay behind. If the boys broke something, Naya got the blame. Her toys disappeared. Her space became smaller. Her voice became quieter. Kofi never hit her. But sometimes, being ignored hurts even more than being shouted at. When she spoke, he barely looked at her. When she brought home good grades, he just nodded and walked away. But what broke her heart completely was something she wasn't even meant to hear. One evening, Kofi had a guest over, a business partner. They sat in the living room, laughing over drinks. Naya was in the hallway, searching for her missing notebook, when she heard it. Her stepfather's voice, clear and cold. "That one isn't mine. I only invest in my blood." She froze. It was like someone punched the air out of her chest. That one. That's what he called her. Not by name. Not even as my stepdaughter. Just that one. Like she didn't matter. Like she didn't belong. Her eyes filled with tears, but she didn't cry. She just stood there, listening as the men chuckled and changed the subject. That night, she went to bed without saying goodnight. She stared at the ceiling for hours, feeling something inside her close up. She realized Kofi would never see her as family. No matter how polite she was, no matter how hard she tried, she could win spelling bees, clean the whole house, help his sons with homework, and it would still never be enough. The next morning, when her mother called out, "Say good morning to Dad," Naya looked at Kofi and said nothing. In her heart, she had stopped calling him Dad the night before. He wasn't her father. Not really. And she didn't belong to him. He had made that very clear. From that moment, Naya changed. She spoke less. She watched more. She started noticing things adults didn't think kids could understand. Money talks, business chats, who held power at the dinner table. If Kofi thought she was invisible, he was wrong. She wasn't invisible. She was becoming unbreakable. Years passed, but nothing changed for Naya. If anything, things got worse. She grew older, wiser and quieter. But in that house, she remained invisible. She could walk into a room and no one would look up. She could speak, and no one would respond. It was like she lived in the shadows of a family that never truly accepted her. The day she graduated was supposed to be special. Naya had worked so hard, staying up late to study, always getting top marks, always trying to prove she was worth something. She graduated with honors, first in her class. Her teachers praised her. Her friends cheered. But the one person she hoped would be there wasn't. Kofi didn't show up. Not even a phone call. Not a message. Just silence. That evening, when she came home with her certificate, the house was full. Kofi had guests over, and the family was having dinner. She stood at the door for a moment, hoping maybe someone would notice her. But no one did. Her mother gave her a small smile and pointed to the folding chair in the corner, the same chair she always sat on. The boys were on the comfortable seats, joking, laughing, eating. Naya sat quietly with her paper in her lap. Not one person asked about her graduation. And it wasn't just that day. On birthdays, her gifts were cheap and rushed. When Kofi's sons turned 18, they were gifted cars. Not brand new, but still flashy enough to turn heads. Naya? She got more chores, more instructions. Clean the garage, do your brother's laundry, run to the store. It was as if her hard work meant nothing. But Naya never shouted, never cried in front of them. She smiled when needed, nodded when spoken to, and carried on. Because deep down, she had started building something of her own. A quiet strength, a plan. She listened closely every time Kofi had meetings at the house. When business partners came over, she served drinks, and stayed close enough to hear every word. She remembered names, figures, company issues, and legal talk. She read papers left out on tables. She peeked into files when no one was looking. If they wouldn't give her a seat at the table, she would build her own. She realized that if love couldn't make her belong, maybe knowledge would. If they wouldn't see her as part of the family, then she would become something more. Something bigger than they ever imagined. They didn't see her, but she saw everything. One quiet Sunday afternoon, the whole house was calm. Kofi had just come back from the hospital after a small heart scare. It wasn't serious, but it shook him enough to start thinking about the future. He suddenly became very serious about his health, his money, and most of all, his will. The very next day he called a lawyer to the house. Everyone was around, but Naya was upstairs studying. She had no idea what was going on until she came down to get a glass of water, and heard voices from the living room. She paused when she heard her name. Her heart began to race, and something told her to stay quiet and listen. The lawyer was reading through the draft of Kofi's will, going over every detail. Kofi didn't lower his voice. In fact, he spoke loudly, almost proudly, as if he wanted the whole house to hear. "To my sons," he said, "I leave everything. The house, the cars, the business, all of it." He paused, then added with a slight laugh, "And to Naya, may she find her way." Naya stood frozen in the hallway, her hand still on the staircase rail. May she find her way. That was all she got. After all the years she had spent in that house, all the times she helped his sons, all the moments she kept quiet and respectful, that was what she was worth to him. But it wasn't just the words that broke her. It was how proud he looked while saying them, like he had done something wise. Like leaving her with nothing was some kind of deep life lesson. He wasn't sad. He didn't hesitate. He looked the lawyer straight in the eye, smiled slightly, and repeated it again. To Naya, may she find her way. She went back upstairs without making a sound. Her legs felt heavy, her chest tight. That night she didn't eat. She didn't study. She just sat on her bed, staring at the wall, holding back tears until she couldn't anymore. And when the tears finally came, they were silent but heavy. Years of being ignored. Years of feeling like an outsider. Years of trying to earn a place in that family. All crushed in one sentence. That night, Naya cried herself to sleep. And it would be the last time she ever cried under that roof. Because after that day, something in her changed forever. There was only one person in Naya's life who had ever made her feel truly seen, her grandfather. He wasn't loud, rich, or powerful like Kofi. He was soft-spoken, gentle, and smart. A retired accountant who loved numbers, books, and quiet tea in the evenings. While the rest of the family ignored Naya, her grandfather would invite her to sit beside him, hand her a pencil, and teach her how to read balance sheets instead of bedtime stories. He used to say, "Businesses are like people, Naya. If you understand their heart, their numbers, you can either help them grow or watch them fall." Naya never forgot those words. He believed in her when no one else did. He saw something in her that even she hadn't discovered yet. Power through patience, and strength through silence. Before he passed away, he left her a small box. Inside were old financial books, handwritten notes, and one final letter that said, "You're worth more than they think. Use your mind. That's where your power is." After that, Naya knew she had to leave. Staying in that house would only bury her deeper. She applied for a scholarship abroad, and when she got accepted, she packed one small duffel bag. No send-off, no goodbye party. Just quiet footsteps out of a house that had never truly felt like home. She left with nothing but her rage, her dreams, and her grandfather's teachings in her heart. For 2 years she studied harder than anyone else. She chose corporate law, not because she liked it, but because it was what men like Kofi used to protect their empires. She wanted to learn the system they trusted, so she could use it better than they ever could. Naya didn't party. She didn't waste time. She worked part-time jobs, stayed in tiny shared rooms, and read every legal file she could find. She kept reminding herself, to Naya, may she find her way. And slowly she did. When she graduated, she walked across the stage with her head high and her heart burning with quiet fire. But her biggest achievement wasn't just the degree, it was the job she landed right after. She got hired at one of the top legal firms in the country. The same firm that handled Kofi's business contracts, property documents, and legal filings. No one there knew her last name. No one knew her story. And that's exactly how she wanted it. Because Naya wasn't there to show off. She was there to watch. to learn. And when the time was right to strike, she wasn't the invisible girl anymore. She was the storm quietly building behind the silence. At the law firm, Naya acted like just another quiet intern. She dressed simple, spoke only when spoken to, and always offered to bring coffee or organize files. No one saw her as anything more than a helper. And that was exactly what she wanted. She kept her head down and her ears open. She didn't need attention. She needed information. The firm handled many clients, but Naya made sure to work on anything linked to Kofi's company. She read every contract, every report, every legal file with silent focus. While others thought she was doing small tasks, she was gathering big knowledge. It didn't take long before she saw the cracks. Kofi's business wasn't doing as well as he thought. On the outside it looked strong, big office, flashy logo, well-dressed staff. But the numbers told a different story. Naya noticed things others missed: delayed payments, bad investments, missing documents. And the worst part? Most of the problems came from Kofi's eldest son, who had taken over more responsibilities. He was careless, throwing company money at useless deals, trusting the wrong people, ignoring advice. Naya didn't smile when she found out. She didn't celebrate. She just kept digging. One day, while reading old family asset documents, she found something that made her freeze. A forgotten share, tied to her late mother. It was small, buried deep in a property clause from years ago. But it was real. That tiny forgotten share made her a legal silent stakeholder in Kofi's company. It was a seed, and all it needed was the right moment to grow. And she knew exactly when that moment would come. With that one loophole, she now had the legal right to make decisions, especially since the company's structure had weakened. She could step in not by force but by law. The same law Kofi had trusted to protect his empire. But for now she stayed quiet. She was just an intern, remember? She smiled politely when someone sent her on coffee runs. She nodded when junior lawyers asked her to organize files. But behind that calm face, her mind was racing. Every move was being planned. Every mistake by Kofi's sons was another step closer. She wasn't in a hurry. Revenge didn't need to be loud. All it needed was the truth, and the right moment. And Naya now had both. It all happened so quietly, so quickly, that no one saw it coming. Not even Kofi. He had gone on a vacation, feeling proud of himself and his business. He had no idea that while he was relaxing by the beach, someone else was carefully taking over everything he had built. That someone was Naya. With all her research, knowledge, and the forgotten share tied to her mother, Naya had everything she needed. She wasn't breaking any laws. Every document she signed was legal. Every step she took backed by the rules of the very system Kofi trusted. She met with the board. She presented her case. She showed them the company's losses, the poor decisions made under Kofi's sons, and the risk of collapse. But she also showed them a plan. Her plan to save it. The board listened. They were tired. Tired of watching things fall apart. Tired of cleaning up mess after mess. And here was this calm, smart, prepared young woman, offering a lifeline. They didn't see her as Kofi's stepdaughter. They saw her as a solution. By the end of the day, the vote was in. Naya was the new CEO. By sunset, the papers were signed. The company's leadership had officially changed. All done legally. All done silently. When Kofi returned a few days later, everything felt strange from the moment he arrived. The guards at the office gate didn't greet him with their usual smiles. In fact, they didn't even let him through. "There's been a change in leadership," one of them said, refusing to meet his eyes. "What are you talking about? I'm the owner." Kofi snapped. "I'm sorry, sir. You'll need to speak with management," the guard replied. Confused and angry, Kofi stormed towards the entrance. But inside, something else stopped him. His nameplate was gone. The office walls that once held his photos were now empty. And his private office? It had a new name on the door. Naya. He walked in, and there she was, calm, confident, sitting behind the desk he once ruled from. She didn't look surprised to see him. She had been expecting this moment. For a second, Kofi just stared at her. He looked around like maybe he was dreaming. But it was all real. The daughter he once ignored. The child he once said didn't deserve anything. The girl he dismissed as someone else's child. She was now in charge of it all. She didn't yell. She didn't rub it in his face. She just looked him in the eye and smiled. Kofi stood frozen for a few seconds, then his face turned red with anger. He slammed his hand on the desk and shouted, "What is this? What kind of game are you playing?" But Naya didn't flinch. She sat quietly, hands folded on the table, looking at him with the same calm she had held for years. She had waited for this moment, but not to gloat. She just wanted the truth to finally speak for itself. "You played the long game?" Kofi snapped, pacing the room. "Is this what you've been planning all along?" Then he laughed, not out of joy, but out of disbelief. A cold, bitter laugh. "Do you think this brings your mother back? Do you think taking my business will change anything?" Still, Naya didn't move. She looked at him with a calm face, the kind of calm that comes from years of silence, from all the pain she had quietly carried. Then she finally stood up slowly and walked around the desk to face him. "No," she said softly. "This doesn't bring her back, and it doesn't erase the past." She paused and looked him directly in the eyes. "But maybe now you'll understand what it feels like to be forgotten, to be invisible in a house you helped build, to give, and still be treated like you're nothing." Kofi didn't respond. He just stared at her, like he didn't know whether to shout again or walk away. Naya didn't give him the chance. She opened a folder, took out the papers, and placed them gently on the desk in front of him. It was his severance package, fair, legal, and generous, more than he ever gave her. "This is for you," she said. "You're no longer needed at the company. It's all official. You're free to go." There was no hate in her voice. No revenge. Just a final, quiet goodbye. She picked up her bag, adjusted her blazer, and turned toward the door. Her heels clicked sharply against the floor, a sound that echoed through the room like thunder. Kofi stood in silence, watching her leave. He wanted to say something, anything, but the words wouldn't come. Because deep down he knew. This wasn't just about a business. This was about a girl who was pushed aside for too long, and finally took her place, not with anger, but with power. And she didn't need to scream to be heard. After Naya walked away from that office, everything started to change. Not just for her, but for the entire family. The mansion, which was once full of noise, laughter, parties, and guests, slowly turned into a silent house. No more loud music, no more celebrations. Just empty halls and closed doors. It began to feel more like a museum than a home. Kofi's sons, who once acted like they owned the world, began to fall apart. Without their father in charge, and without Naya quietly fixing their messes from behind the scenes, everything started to crack. The eldest son, angry and desperate, tried to sue Naya. He thought he could take the company back or at least get some money out of it, but he didn't know the law like she did. The court dismissed his case, and he walked out with nothing, not even his pride. The younger son was different. He showed up at Naya's office one day, looking tired and defeated. He didn't come with threats. He came with a soft voice and a simple question. "Do you have a job for me?" He never looked her in the eye. He knew what they had done to her. He knew how they had treated her like she didn't belong. And now here he was, begging for a chance from the same girl they once ignored. But Naya didn't answer right away. She told him she'd think about it. Not out of revenge, but because she wanted him to understand something. Positions must be earned, not given out of pity. Back at the mansion, Kofi sat alone most days. The house that once made him feel powerful now felt like a cage. His phone stopped ringing. Friends disappeared. Business partners stopped calling. He watched his legacy fall apart, piece by piece. But here's the truth. Naya didn't destroy anything. She didn't break the company. She didn't turn the brothers against each other. She didn't make the house go quiet. All she did was walk away and take the part of herself they had always ignored. Her strength, her mind, her care. Without her, everything else fell down. Because the truth is, Kofi had built his empire on ego, pride, and favoritism. And without the silent, steady presence of the girl he once called not mine, his whole world turned into dust. She wasn't the problem. She had always been the foundation. Naya didn't take over the company just to keep it. She had never been interested in sitting in a big office and feeling powerful. Her goal was never about revenge or control. She only wanted to fix what was broken, and then let it go. She spent a few months working hard. She looked at every department, every employee, every hidden problem. She cleaned up the mess Kofi's sons had left behind. She fired people who didn't care, promoted the ones who worked silently in the background, just like she once did. She made the company stable, strong, and clean. Then, when everything was finally in place, she sold it. Not for a quick profit, but to the right global firm. A company that valued people, respected women, and believed in fairness. She made sure the staff were protected, and that the business would continue to grow, even without her. After the sale, Naya had more money than she ever imagined. But instead of spending it on luxury or showing off, she had only one thing in mind. A school. Not a fancy school for the rich, but a place for girls like her. Girls who were ignored, overlooked, or told they didn't belong. A school where they could learn about business, leadership, and confidence. A place that taught not just math and reading, but also how to stay calm in a room full of people who don't believe in you. How to read contracts. How to lead quietly. How to speak with actions, not just words. She bought the land herself. She designed every part of the building with care. The classrooms were simple but full of light. The walls had quotes from strong women. The library was filled with books her grandfather once gave her, the same ones that had shaped her into who she became. And when it was time to name the school, she didn't have to think twice. She named it after her mother, the woman who tried to protect her, the woman who believed in love and gave her the strength to love herself, even when others didn't. When the school opened, Naya didn't stand on a big stage or make a loud speech. She just stood at the gate, greeting each girl with a soft smile and a kind word. This was her real inheritance. Not the company, not the money, but the chance to change lives, quietly, powerfully, and with purpose. Just like she had always dreamed. Years had passed. Kofi was no longer the powerful man people once feared. His hair had turned gray, his back slightly bent, and his voice wasn't as strong as it used to be. He had lost his company, his respect, and the loyalty of the sons he once favored. Now he was just a guest at a women's leadership event, sitting quietly at the back, unnoticed by most. And then he heard her voice. Naya. She stood on stage, confident and glowing. She wasn't trying to impress anyone. She wasn't bitter. She was simply sharing her story with hundreds of young women, telling them how silence can be strength, how kindness can be power, and how rejection can become redirection. Kofi's heart tightened as he watched her. The little girl he once pushed aside was now a woman the world admired. A woman who didn't need his name, his approval, or his help. She had built her own name, her own space, her own life. After the event, he slowly walked toward her, leaning a little on his cane. People moved out of the way, sensing something was about to happen. Naya saw him coming. For a moment, time stood still. Then she smiled. Not a fake smile. Not a cruel one. Just calm and soft. Kofi opened his mouth to say something, anything. But before he could speak, Naya gently said, "You said I wasn't yours." She paused, her eyes kind but firm. "You were right." He blinked, confused, maybe even hurt. She continued, "But I became mine." And that was more than enough. Her words didn't carry anger, just truth. And before he could respond, she turned and walked away, not rushed, not heavy, just peaceful. This time, she didn't walk away because of pain. She walked away because she had healed, because she had nothing left to prove. And Kofi? He just stood there, watching her disappear into the crowd of women who now looked up to her like a light. He had lost her long ago, but now he truly understood what he had thrown away. He didn't cry. He didn't speak. He just stood in the quiet, realizing she didn't need to belong to him, because she belonged to herself. And that was something he could never take away. If you've ever been told you weren't enough, let this be your reminder. You don't need their name, their approval, or their love to become powerful. You just need to choose you. Tag someone who needs to hear this. Drop a fire if you believe healing is the best revenge. Save this for the day you finally walk away, not in pain but in peace.